Hello, kids. I hope you guys are having a good week at home. I hope you're being good for your parents. I hope that you enjoy our church services that we're putting online, and we wanted to do some classes for the kids, so this is one of them. You might be wondering why I'm here in front of this stripy background. It's because we have some very special guests who will be visiting us in a little bit from behind the stripy wall. And so that is why that is up. But right now, I want to start telling you a story about a special job for an ordinary boy. Maybe you wonder, what could God have for me to do? What could there be that a little boy or a little girl might be able to do? I'm just normal. I don't feel like I'm super special or super talented. And we're gonna be reading a story over the next few weeks about an ordinary boy that God had a special job for. But first I wanna ask you a question. What does it mean to go on a mission? Think about that for a minute. What is a mission? If somebody sends you on a mission, they say, I have a mission for you. What does that mean? What do you think? A mission is kind of like being given an important job. So have you ever been sent on a mission? Maybe it's late at night and you're watching a movie with your family and your dad says, I have a mission for you. I want you to go into the freezer and get me some ice cream. It's a very special mission. Can you do this? Of course, we would all say, yes, as long as I get ice cream too, right? But most of us have been given a job before, maybe a super important job and maybe a less important job like ice cream. But the most important mission that anybody could be given in the world is the one that God has given to all of us in the Bible. We have the special important job of spreading the good news that Jesus loves people and that he died for them and that he rose again. We just celebrated Easter, and that is what that is all about. There are a special group of people who oftentimes will not just stay in their place where they grew up or maybe in their same country where they were born, but they go somewhere else and talk to people in another country who have not heard about the gospel. Some of them have not heard about the gospel. Some of them have, but they need to be told and reminded again, just like we do. And do you guys remember the name for these kinds of people who do this? It's an easy one. I think you'll know it. We call them missionaries. Today's story is a true story about a man named Richard Rowe, and he was a missionary to some people in the Philippines. So I have a globe here. Do you guys like playing with globes? On this globe, we live here in the United States, and this is New Mexico, this little yellow one. There's a glare, there we are right there. Santa Fe is a star. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. It's right there. I might be pointing to Albuquerque. It's right there. But this is where we live in the Philippines. So if you go this way across the United States, this is the Atlantic Ocean. Here's Africa, here's Europe, here's Asia, here's India, here's Southeast Asia, here's Australia. But right here, below China, here are the islands of Japan. And right here are some other islands called the Philippines. I'll put it up there so you can see. They're pink on this globe. These are the Philippine Islands. And this is where this man, Richard Rowe, was a missionary to. And the group of people that he went at this time, that he was specifically working with, were called the Isnog people. Now, I'm not 100% sure I'm even saying their name right because I'm not super sure how they pronounced it, but that is how I think you say it, Isnog. And the Isnog people live differently from how many of us live in Santa Fe. Many of the Isnog people were farmers, and there's farmers in Santa Fe, and not a lot of crops grow here, not the same kinds of things as would grow in the Philippines, but we can grow chilies and beans and apples grow some places and apricots and things like that. But in the Philippines, they grow things like rice, which needs a lot of water, and we don't have a lot of water in Santa Fe, but they do in the Philippines. And they also grow some corn and some coffee. Some of them raised animals on their farms, and a lot of the people lived along a river because if you're farming, you need water, and there's lots of water in the river. And so they live close to the river, and they have small houses, and they're typically decorated with colors, and they are raised up off the ground on stilts because they want to be close to the water, but not in the water, right? So they have their houses on stilts, and I have a picture here to show you. I want to make sure I'm getting it in there. This is a picture actually of the Isnog people in the Philippines. Hello. Looks pretty different from Santa Fe. Some things about it look different and some things look similar, but this looks like a poor section of the town, but you can see their houses here are up on stilts off the ground so that if the river rises or something, it won't flood their house. They can just go up the steps and go in the house and they stay dry. A lot of the people, the Isnog people, I'm going to try to keep holding this so you can see it. A lot of these people don't believe in the one true God. We talked about, we heard a story about Ringu several weeks ago, back when we were still meeting at church. And kind of similar to Ringu's family, they believed in evil spirits and they're afraid of them. And so when Richard Rowe, this missionary, went to these people, a lot of the people were mostly afraid. They didn't know that there was a God who loved them. And why do you think it would be that they didn't know that the one true God who created everything loved them? Think about that and think why that might be. I'll tell you why it was if you didn't think of a good suggestion. It's because they didn't have the Bible in their language. Now, a lot of people can speak more than one language in the world. Maybe you speak more than one language. The Isnog people are like this. A lot of people speak the main language of their country, like maybe sometimes they call it a trade language. And then they also have a language that they grew up speaking and they speak it at home and stuff. And so a lot of people in the world maybe have access to a Bible that is in the trade language, but maybe not in their own personal language. And I was thinking about, I speak some Spanish, but if I only had a Bible in Spanish, it would be really hard for me to read and understand and really feel the truth in the Bible because I'm not very good at reading in Spanish. I can speak Spanish, but it's a lot of work for me to read in Spanish. And I feel like I speak Spanish pretty well, but still, to read in Spanish, it takes a lot of work and a lot of concentration for me to really read any book in Spanish. But these people, not only did they not have a Bible in their language, but they actually didn't have any books in their own language. Can you imagine if you didn't have any books in English or whatever your main language is? You would have to learn a different language to be able to read anything. Imagine if there were no books in English, everybody had to learn Spanish if they wanted to read. This is just my example, my silly example. It could be any language. Everybody will have to learn a different language if they want to read any book ever. That would be kind of bummer. I like reading. I don't know if you like reading, but I like to be able to read in my normal language that I speak all the time. Here in the United States, we do have many Bibles in our language available to us. If you don't have a Bible, let me know and I can make sure you get one because we have plenty of Bibles here. And we would like for you to have a Bible if you don't own one. But there's many people in the world who don't have a Bible written in their, sometimes people call it their heart language, their language that they grew up speaking and that they speak in their home. And that's like the Isnog people. They didn't have a Bible in their own language before this missionary, Richard Rowe, went to the Philippines. They didn't have a Bible, they hadn't read it, they didn't even know who Jesus was. And so we are going to come back in just a minute. Our special guests are going to come and do some singing for us, but then we're going to come back and hear how Richard Rowe came to these people and how he managed to tell them about Jesus when they didn't even have a Bible written in their language. We'll have to see what he did to be able to tell them about Jesus. Hey kids, we're going to sing some songs. Sing with us if you know the words. Jesus loves me, this I know. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that singing, and I hope you sang along if you know that song. There was some crazy stuff going on back there with those special guests, so I hope we can get them to come back another time because it was hard to get them to do any work. I'll just tell you that right now. Do you remember the name of the group of people that we were just talking about before our special guest sang for us? It was the Isnog people who live in the island country called, say it if you know it, it's the Philippines. And we're talking about a missionary who came to tell them the good news about Jesus. And the missionary's name was, do you remember? His name was Richard Rowe. So we're going to keep talking about him. He was the first white man that many of these Filipino people had ever seen, the Isnog people. But imagine if you were in a place and somebody came who looked very different from everybody you had ever known. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. God created people with all beautiful kinds of skin colors, very dark and very light and very in between. But when somebody looks different from what you're used to, you notice it, right? And that's how these people were. And actually, they were a little bit of afraid of him. They had never seen anyone who looked like him. And the rumor went around that he liked to eat little boys. So you can imagine they were a little bit afraid of that too. Of course, this rumor was not true. Mr. Rowe was a very kind man, and he loved the Isnog people, and he wanted them to know and love Jesus. And so he lived there in their village with them, and he learned to do some things like they did. So maybe they would be not so afraid of him. He looked very different, and he couldn't really change that, but he could eat the same kind of food that they ate. And so he learned how to eat grubs, which some of them ate. Do you guys know what grubs are? They're fat little worms that live in the ground. He also ate rice and goat meat, fish, and even some beetles. Have you ever eaten a beetle? Some people like beetles. Some people eat big ants. Some people eat tarantulas. Many people around the world eat all kinds of things. And so Richard Rowe was learning to eat the kinds of things that they ate. And he became a lot like the Isnog people. As he was wanting to minister to them, he wanted to be as much like them as he could so that they would accept him and listen to what he had to say. But there was one thing that he didn't do like them, and that is that he was not afraid of the evil spirits like they were. Richard often would say, I know the spirit who is the strongest, he's kind and he's loving and he forgives instead of making me afraid. He loves me and he loves you too, he would tell the Isnog people. And who do you think Richard Rowe was talking about when he said he knew the greatest spirit? Any thoughts? He was talking about God, the Holy Spirit. The Bible teaches God is a spirit. And so Richard Rowe was talking about knowing God. One day, when Richard Rowe was walking along, he saw a little boy crying with his face buried in his hands. This boy's name was Leonardo Pugiao, and people usually called him Nard for short. Why are you crying, Nard? Richard asked him. And Nard said, those evil spirits are just so bad and mean. It doesn't matter what we do. They're never happy with us, and I'm so afraid of them. Just then Nard heard his older sister calling from the jungle. Ading! This means brother. Ading, where are you? Do you have the firewood gathered? Nard wanted to talk to Richard more, but he had to get back to work. His sister was waiting for him. Everyone in the Isnog tribe had chores they needed to do, even the small children. Some of them chopped firewood, others fished, others gathered berries, some of them carried water. Nard didn't really like working very much, but he knew there was only one thing that could get him out of doing chores, and that was going to school. Now, the Isnog people had an interesting way of deciding if a child was ready to go to school. That child had to be able to reach their left arm over their head and grab their right ear. So for example, for me, an adult, I can easily, you can't even see my ear, my left arm easily goes over my head and reaches my right ear. Can you do it? Try it and see. If your left arm goes over your head and can reach your right ear. Well, the day arrived for Nard to see if he was ready to go to school. His father said, "Let's see if you can do it." This was a big moment. "Go on, Nard," encouraged his father. "You can do it." Nard took a deep breath and reached his left arm over his head to see if he could grab his right ear. Could he do it? I don't know. From this picture, it looks like he can, but you'll have to wait till next week to find out for sure if Nard was ready for school or not, so he could get out of doing all his chores. That's not the only reason to go to school, but that's why Nard wanted to go to school, so he wouldn't have to do so many chores. I want to let you kids know, if you watched this video today, I'm so glad you did. I want you to check in the comments of this video, either on YouTube or on Facebook. Go ahead and just write your name and that you watched it, and everybody who checks in the comments will be entered to win an ice cream gift card. So we will be drawing a name out of everybody who checks in, and today is Monday, so I will draw a name Tuesday night. So everybody has until Tuesday night, let's say at 8 o'clock Mountain Time. 8 o'clock Mountain Time, all the children who watch the video can check in by putting their name in the comments. Now you have to be of junior church age, and in our church that means you're not in the teen group, and the teen group means 7th grade. So if you are not yet in 7th grade, you are younger than 7th, not older than 7th grade. I see you trying to check in because you're older than 7th grade, but that's not gonna work. If you're younger than 7th grade, you can check in with your name in the comments and you will be entered to win an ice cream gift card. So we will come back Tuesday night with the reveal. We'll draw a name and send out a gift card to the winner. Thank you for watching, and next week we will be back to find out if Nard is able to reach his left arm over his head and touch his right ear so he can go to school, and what will happen if he does.